Today I'm making over a brown jewelry chest, and I've already painted it in the color Violet Shadow, and now I'm going to add an inlay to the sides and the top. I'm using the paint inlay called Lattice Rose from Orchid Design, and you can see all of the pages that are in it, and I'm using the roses. So the first thing I do is size it by putting it over my space, making just a crease down the side, and then cutting it out because I just want to use the amount of inlay that I need. The next step I'm going to do is I'm going to lay it directly into the wet paint. Now the paint that I use, Rethunk Junk by Laura, is a water-based acrylic paint that has a resin additive in it. This paint is not chalk paint. It doesn't have any clay, mineral, or powder substance in it. And I tell you that to let you know that you can apply inlays into really any kind of paint. It doesn't have to just be a chalk paint, but I know some people prefer that. Now on this, I did make a little bit of oops, and I made my paint too thick. But instead of cutting that out of the video, I'm going to show you what I did, my oops, and how I fixed it, so you don't panic if you do the same thing. So when you're laying down an inlay, you always want to make sure grid side is up. So you can see as I pulled that back, way too much paint on that, and it did occlude or cloud some of my paint from adhering properly. And again, I'll show you how I fix that. But for basic application, I just wet my paper towel and I go over it to make sure that it has good contact with the surface. Now, what is an inlay? Well, an inlay is paint embedded into this rice type paper, and when this process is finished, the paint is going to come off the paper and onto my project. Now, while that was drying, I decided to add some transfers to the little insets in the front drawers, and I used the Fairy Tale floral transfer. I just want to put it into the little inset, and so I take a skewer, and the pointy part of the skewer, you could do a popsicle stick, any little kind of thing, and I'm just tracing around it to make the crease, and then I'm just going to cut it out so that it will fit well in the space. When I'm ready to apply it, I take the white backing off and I carefully place it in my space. Once it's down, it's hard to pull it up without messing it up. I take my white rubbing stick that comes with your set of transfers. If you misplace that, you can use a popsicle stick, any just kind of hard object to rub over it. When it's done, I'll just take my little transfer top and turn it over to the shiny side and burnish it, which means just going over it one more time to make sure that all of the pieces have a good adhesion to it. I'm doing the same thing with the bottom piece, and then I am going to kind of turn it the opposite way. Now that I have those in place, I decided I wanted to seal them, and so I'm going to use my UV resin. And with UV resin, you do not have to have a UV light to cure it. I love UV resin because you can cure it in like 2 to 3 minutes. No real wait time. You don't have to have a UV light. If it's a sunny day, you can set it out in the sun. And UV resin works best with just a little thin coat. But you see, I've got this little UV flashlight, and I just cured it so quickly. Now my inlay is dry, and so I just wet it again, let that water soak in, and I peeled it off. But look, here's where my oops was. And you can see in the areas where I just put too much paint and it just did not transfer over. So I'm going to go back and put a much thinner layer of paint in those areas. And I am going to use bits and pieces of the inlay, and I'm just going to kind of patch it up. And this worked well. So my advice is you don't need a uber thick layer of paint. You just need a wet layer of paint on there so your inlay has something to transfer onto and grab onto. But patching it up like this worked, and it turned out beautiful, and you'll see that in the final pictures. So while these inlays and the other side of inlay were drying, I decided that I needed to paint my hardware because, well, I just want it all to blend nicely together. So I took my paint, my Rethunk Junk by Laura Violet Shadow color, which is what I painted the whole box with, and I painted my hardware. I have 2 little pieces on top and 2 little round circles on the bottom. So I painted them first Violet Shadow, and then I decided I was going to add some of the metallic color pixie dust to my whole box. So once my hardware was dry, then I just took my metallic pixie dust, which I kind of use like a rub and buff. I just put my finger in there and just rub it all over the surface where I want it. It was a little still translucent. I didn't put a real dark layer on it, so I can still see some of that violet shadow purple color paint underneath, and I just loved the accent that it gave it. So then I started thinking, well, this looks so beautiful on the hardware. I think I want to add some more of the metallic on the whole jewelry piece. So you'll see how I did that. Now my second inlay on the other side is complete, and this one came off much better because I used a thinner layer of paint. Again, spritz it with the water, let that water soak in and wet your paper, and then gently pull it off because you can use these inlays up to 3 times. Beautiful. Look at how lovely that came off and the inlay paint applied. Now I'm just going to add a little pixie dust, a little heavier in these open areas where the inlay is not, and then I'm going to do kind of like a light dry brushing over top the inlay. Now you might be asking, did I seal this inlay before I added this paint to it? No, I didn't, because the paint I use is self-sealing, and I find that as long as I don't get it real wet with another substance before I do this step, that I can, when I know this inlay is really dry, that I can add paint touches over it and I don't worry about it smearing. I am going to seal all of it completely when I'm finished, but I don't have to do that before this step with the paint product that I use, which is Rethunk Junk by Laura. I really love the look of this gold pixie dust color, pixie dust metallic that I put over it, and it just gave it a really beautiful kind of vintage look. Now, a few other things that I did to this box before it was complete. I decided that I was going to paint the fabric on the inside, and so I just took my color Violet Shadow, and you'll see pictures of that at the end. I just spritzed the inside fabric pieces with water, and I just painted over them, and it freshened them up, and it looks so much better, and it complements the whole piece altogether. I put the hardware back on, I put the glass inserts back in, and my little jewelry box, I cleaned the mirror, I cleaned the windows, did all of those things to spruce it up, and the jewelry box is complete. So with the addition of paint, some Iron Orchid Design inlays and transfers, what a fun, cute, beautiful transformation.